Welcome to the Afterspin, opinions from thought leaders in our state. John Hood and Chris Fitzsimon, who owns the sand? That's a question that's being raised by a retired couple who purchased oceanfront property in Emerald Isle. They claim their deed says they own the beach all the way to the average high water line. A Court of Appeals ruling says the dry sand beaches in North Carolina are public property. The Supreme Court's going to consider the ruling. What's your take on who owns the sand?
Well, I think the Court of Appeals is right. Otherwise, there would be very little public beach. This is a natural resource. It's owned by, I think, by the people of North Carolina. I think it ought to be protective of the people of North Carolina. They certainly own the property up until the beach starts. But imagine if everybody at Emerald Isle or Garden City or Carolina Beach, if everybody who owned a beachfront house said they owned the sand all the way to the water, there'd be no beach. There'd be nowhere to walk.
That's what their deed says.
Well, their deed's wrong. I mean, I think the Court of Appeals has ruled it's wrong. It's not just me saying that.
Well, John, respond to that.
I will respond by saying you're both just simply wrong. That's not what the Court of Appeals ruled. No one is disputing that the property owners own that part of the beach. In fact, most property lines go up to the place where the high tide mark is. It doesn't stop at the dunes. It doesn't start at the vegetation. The actual dispute is not about who owns that strip of sand. It's about whether the public whether the state has a public trust power over that. So it's about access by the public to what is private property. Everybody stipulates that it's private property, but because the argument goes that part of the beach has traditionally been treated as available to public access. That's been the tradition. It's even been in ordinances in the past. Now, the Court of Appeals was a unanimous decision in favor of the state, or in favor of the municipality, in this case, Emerald Isle. But it also correctly noted there is no binding precedent on the Court of Appeals, the Supreme Court, on this issue.
But I have to ask this question. Emerald Isle has essentially done a taking on 3 feet of this land that these people own.
That is what the dispute is about. Again, not who owns it, because everybody knows it's privately owned. The question is, has their property been taken under the Fifth Amendment? Do they deserve compensation? It's a taking if there is no public trust doctrine that applies to this land. If there is, then allowing people access to it is not going to be considered a taking.
Think about that for a second. The next time you walk down a mile of any beach in North Carolina, if you're walking on the sand and you can't go on that property because somebody else owns it, what happens to our beaches?
Well, I mean, this has always been the case, and nobody has ever had a problem with it. But theoretically,
because the public has had access to it. That's the point.
But if you're theoretically, those people own that property.
Those people could put a fence from their house all the way to the water.
Should we change the laws in North Carolina saying you can't own that beach?
Well, that's a good, interesting question. We could do something statutory. Of course, it wouldn't be retroactive, so you'd have to think about that. But the other issue is the Supreme Court is going to take this case, and they will issue a ruling, and that will probably settle the matter unless they sort of punt it. And I think the matter will be settled fairly definitively.
Well, thank you for watching the Afterspin. We'll have more video all during the week on ncspin.com.